Hello, welcome. I will be talking about something that I'm a little bit passionate about today. I'm going to be talking about labeling theory, court systems, and how Black people are involved in all of that. When I was in college, I got pulled over for having an inspired license tags, and I was given a court date. What did I see when I showed up to court in a mostly white demographic? A room full of Black people. I didn't think much about this at the time when I was mostly concerned with trying to pay as little as possible and trying not to get in trouble. Also, with having limited financial resources as a student, I was mostly trying to get out of and pay as little as possible. But now looking back and looking at all the other times I've been to court, I'm able to reflect a little bit deeper on what I saw that day and what I continue to see every time I go to court, unfortunately. I live in a mostly Black demographic now, and I see the same things I saw in that mostly white neighborhood in school, a room full of Black people. But it makes me wonder what I would see in a variety of different demographics. Going back to my first time in court, I remember being very nervous going up to the podium to explain my way of why my license tags were expired. I wondered why and how everyone else around me seemed so casual in a room filled with law enforcement, police officers, and the judge in front of us. I was very nervous. It's as if they had been there before, that they were used to this setting already. But it brings the question to my mind why Black people are so casual to show up in these spaces. Maybe it's because these spaces are built for Black people. There's a story of a Black woman who worked as a cook for a white man and she was sexually harassed by him. She told this account to her husband, and he then showed up to the white employer's house, and the white employer then slapped him and had him arrested. When retelling the sexual harassment that his wife endured, the judge listened and said this: the court will never take the word of a against the word of a white man. The story happened in the 1900s, and it shows us a little bit into the systematic creation of the court systems that's built on injustice. I appreciate that we're able to answer certain questions like why Black people are more comfortable in these settings and show up higher than white people in these settings. And we're able to use critical race theory and previous findings before us to answer these questions. Howard Becker is able to give us some insight and reasoning to this with labeling theory. Labeling theory posits that self identity and the behavior of individuals may be determined or influenced by the terms used to describe or classify them. It is associated with the concepts of self fulfilling prophecy and stereotyping. When people are targeted as, quote, troublemakers or, quote, criminals, they may internalize that message and label and act in ways that reinforce it, showing how social reactions can actually create the very defiance they aim to control. I feel the most important aspect of this is how it shows up in young children. We assign certain labels to children when they're in primary school, and it can really linger and show up in their adulthood. This may be a very far away concept, but there's a scene from Nathan For You where he's trying to help this toy maker sell more of his toys. The toy maker just recently created this new toy that's not selling very well. So Nathan gets together a focus group of, I think, 5 year olds, and he essentially manipulates them into thinking that this toy will not make them a baby, and told them, okay, you're not a baby. They feel validated by this. Now that this adult is telling them that they have this thing in their hands and it makes them not a baby, they're excited and validated by having this. What this tells us is that obviously children are very malleable and easily manipulated. But what happens when we tell a young Black child that they're a criminal and they are bound to be a prisoner, that their behavior is inherently unacceptable, and we don't provide them with ways and patterns to change that behavior? Instead, we continue to punish them for, quote, unacceptable behavior. When we tell someone something about themselves and put a label on them they're more likely to act in ways that assimilate with that label. When people started telling me that my cooking was good, I unconsciously started cooking more, and I felt more comfortable cooking new recipes that I hadn't tried before. This wasn't something that I thought at directly. I never had the thought that my mom liked my lasagna, so I'm gonna make more recipes. This was something that I just did unconsciously, and it wasn't until later that I was able to see a change in my behaviors. And blacks have historically been characterized as being less intelligent than whites. It's the same that women have been viewed as less emotionally stable than men. In Beverly Daniel Tatum's Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, she uses the term dominance to refer to groups that society has been catered to and that hold the power and authority in society relative to subordinates, those who are minority groups that are generally oppressed. She says that dominance determine how the power and authority may be acceptably used. She says that this can happen to the extent that the targeted group internalizes the images that the dominant group reflects back to them. They may find it difficult to believe in their own ability. You have to actively go against this concept that is put onto you, especially when that is continuously portrayed in popular media. Growing up, black people had limited few positive representations of black families portrayed on TV. Shows such as Family Matters, the Bernie Mac Show, The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, The Cosby Show were our way to see black families in a positive light. Conversely, there was a lot of media intended to do the opposite of that and show black families and black relationships in a negative light. This is what a lot of people look down upon and criticize, specifically Tyler Perry, a popular black media producer, for. Tyler Perry has a lineage of movies and shows portraying a stereotypical black family and relationship. In his popular film Diary of a Black Woman, we follow the main character Helen, who's married to a deceitful and manipulative husband, Charles, who's cheating on Helen. Charles walks into the house one day with his mistress, Brenda, a white woman, and demands a divorce from Helen. Helen begs and pleads, trying to save her marriage, but he then proceeds to drag her out of the front door. She then marries a light skinned man and lives happily ever after. Tyler Perry has also been accused of being colorist for a very good reason. Obviously, the goal of this film and all films alike is to make money. That's the end goal. And you need drama to entice people, to entertain them, and to keep them watching. But why must it be in this way? Why does he continue this theme of showing very negative, stereotypical black relationships and black families? He continues this theme in several of his later films. In the synopsis of I Can Do Bad All by Myself, the main character April is an alcoholic singer and lives with her abusive boyfriend, Randy. Tyler Perry puts black men in this typecast role as abusive, controlling, bad men, and bad partners. In Tyler Perry's Insidious Sisters, one of his newest TV show productions, he showcases five single black women. The show deals with the relationships of these five single black women, and it varies from emotional abuse to physical abuse and a lot of stereotypical showings of black males. This is what you're seeing continuously on TV, on media. This is something that you may internalize and not necessarily seek, but see that other people see you in this way. Even if, let's say, 60 or 70% of the time you turn on your TV to watch a movie or TV show, and you're seeing this certain portrayal of black men and black women interacting with each other, this is something that you may feel that other people, non-black people, may see about your culture. I wrote a paper on labeling theory when I was in college and how these negative labels show up in young people and lead to criminal behavior. Children and young adults who have early experiences with being labeled as delinquents causes further harm to them as it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. The negative terminology that is accompanied with labeling theory, such as delinquent, offender, criminal. I argued at this time that labeling theory could start as early as primary school, where kids are starting to be sanctioned and separated into different classes and academic performance levels. Within classrooms, those that are labeled as gifted or troublesome create the lines of individual distinction. Acts of defiance are publicly announced and defined as immoral, but too often we don't show kids ways to improve or correct this behavior. We simply punish them. Fortunately, some Black students are able to individualize themselves in a positive light with excelling in athletics or in their academic studies. But for those who have negative early encounters with officers and juvenile centers, this marks the start of this self fulfilling behavior. For those that were in gifted programs, think of how you felt when you were labeled as gifted. For some that are labeled as gifted in primary schools, it creates this distinction and sets others apart from each other. Children with the self conception as defiant seek rationalizations and acceptance from those with similar outlook as those that have been labeled and rejected by peers. These involvements can lead to further criminal behavior as associations with delinquents increase throughout adolescence. And in some cases, that leads to early juvenile centers. Young Black children see these court systems too early, and it traps them in a system built against them. Juvenile systems entrap juvenile offenders in sequence of continuing criminal behavior once they are labeled and kept out of mainstream behavior and peers. There has been studies of closer associations with criminal activity once a delinquent has entered into the juvenile system. Sanctioning agents within the juvenile system are the punitive societal reactions to the crime that increase the likelihood of future crime. These are the outcomes. We know that criminals have limited outcomes once serving time. Typically, it is these dominant groups, oppressive groups, whites, and men, that determine the fate of these now first time offenders. Whether it's reflected in determining who gets a job, whose history will be taught in school, or whose relationship will be validated by society. These dominant groups structure society. How is it so easy for these oppressive groups to ignore this? The dominant group is seen as the norm for humanity. Whites are less likely to be entrapped in these criminal systems where they do similar or worse crime. In some cases, when they are poor, a trait of the subordinate attributed with Blackness, they do see some of the similar treatment. Dominant group generally do not like to be reminded of the existence of inequality. Because rationalizations have been created to justify the social arrangements, it's easy to believe that everything is as it should be. This is why disagreements by whites happen over simple statements such as Black Lives Matter. Some whites turn away from the systematic inequality of Black people with justifications they tell themselves. They lie that everyone is given the same opportunities, but with history and evidence, we are able to unmask the pre-advantages and step stools afforded to white people. This affords white people to be able to land better jobs, safer encounters with enforcement officials, and less criminal prosecution. These Black people that end up in these systems are handed bad cards and unfortunately play badly with them. This may include joining gangs, exiting school systems that villainize them, and using crime as a tool to provide monetary gains and community. You know you're good at Tetris, why would you waste your time playing Go? Everyone tells you that you're bad at Go and you'll never be a good player and it's not realistic for you. Black people that do end up in highly educated fields, law schools, doctorate programs, play very, very well with very bad cards. And it's easier for those in better economic standings, but the disadvantage will always be being Black. You must convince those in dominant positions that control your fate that you are the exception to this rule. There's a quote here that says, "People pay attention to those who control their outcomes. In an effort to predict and possibly influence what is going to happen to them, people gather information about those in power. We must emulate them in a way to get in a good position, but play safe in not believing in the stereotypes against Black people that may cause self-hate. In a situation of unequal power, a subordinate group has to focus on survival. It becomes very important for the subordinates to become highly attuned to the dominants as a way of protecting themselves from them. I like the example here that women that have been battered by men often talk about the heightened sensitivity that they develop to their partner's mood as a way of protection. In closing, I appreciate that Beverly Daniel Tatum encourage us to look at our privileges in any way we can. We must understand our targeted identities in order to point out injustice and speak up against it. But we can also recognize the ways in which we are privileged. Whether that may be being accepted in a sanction of a heterosexual relationship or receiving daily advantages in being able bodied, educated, or middle class, or living in the city, we can still look at ways in which we are privileged. The end. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed. Please leave any comments, any discussion, or if you felt really connected to this topic. And that's it. Thank you. Bye. 7, 8, 9, 10. Right here. Every time you turn on your television or turn on your radio and you hear, no one's using radio, no one's using radio. Okay.